Hello and good morning. This is the book that most of us have been talking about for days. It's about the child killer Mary Bell, and it's published today. June Richardson, the mother of one of the victims, and his sisters are in the studio this morning, reliving their trauma yet again. We're told the book can help us understand the minds of child killers. But should it ever have been written? Should this book have been written, Beverly?
Definitely.
Why?
Well, because I think it's an issue of free speech. I'm not too interested in the issue itself, but I think as it has been written, it should be published. People do not have the right not to be offended.
But even if it offends people deeply?
Well, who decides? If you're saying that it offends people, who decides then?
June?
If you'd had a life like mine through this type of thing, you might not be able to say what you're saying now.
Explain.
Gita Sheeny fetched the first book out. She published it without my knowledge. I went into Newcastle and all I could see in Newcastle was Mary Bell's face. Now you've got to remember my son was only 4 and then she took his life. And I hope you can be as forgiving as I'm trying to be.
But I don't think it's the issue of the crime. The issue is an issue of free speech.
You're talking to June. You're talking to June.
It's an issue of free speech.
This is free speech. It's all right free speech if it's not hurting people. But I tried to commit suicide after that book.
But things will always hurt people. There'll always be someone who'll be offended by something. And I'm afraid
if this book
people should be
is
allowed
proved to be a book that will help me understand why this person murdered my child and another little boy, then I would give the go-ahead. I believe in free speech. I also believe in rehabilitation. I work for NACRO for a year. So I'm not saying that any of these issues, all I'm saying is that this book was done in the wrong way. We were never warned.
But I don't think the book should have to show that it's going to be a self-help. It's going to shed some light. I think the most important thing is that I don't think certain things should be on the pale. I think that if someone writes something, if someone wants to get something published, you can ignore it or you can read it, and it's entirely up to you. We're adults and we can deal with this.
If Mary Bell hadn't have strangled 2 little boys, she couldn't have wrote a book because she'd have nothing to write about.
June, I object to the book being published. For the simple reason I'm in the same boat as yourself. I've gone many years through it, and honest to God, she should have been left in prison in the first place. She should never have come out.
But should she not have been allowed to collaborate in the writing of this book?
No, definitely not.
Why not?
Because they're getting the privileges of writing books in prison or out of prison after they've done time. What are we getting? Nothing.
Helen?
I think
Turn round, Helen.
I think when people say that she couldn't have written this book without...
Shouldn't have been allowed to.
Well, June was saying that she couldn't have written this book without having murdered those 2 children. I think obviously that's right, but we all write books and we all our life experience informs what we do. And in a way, somebody who's had extraordinary...
I've had 32 years of it. And I'm not wrote a book.
Yeah, well, you're perfectly entitled to.
I don't want to.
Somebody who's had a very boring, ordinary life is not necessarily going to write something very interesting. Somebody who's had an extraordinary experience, somebody who's had something really unique and interesting happen to them has got more to say.
Hang on, please, hang on. It's unique and interesting what happened to Mary Bell.
It is unique and interesting.
No, it's a load of rubbish, that. No, definitely not.
I didn't really quite agree with
you used the word unique, something unique and interesting has happened to Mary Bell. It is unique and interesting. The fact that she killed, she strangled June's son.
And then make them unique and famous.
June, yes, go on.
I mean, you're saying to me this girl is unique and interesting, make her famous.
I think her experience is interesting, yes.
Yeah, but it should be for psychologists, it should be for the academy, books to put in academies and libraries to train people to stop people killing people, not for the public to sort of bandy over it.
Hold on,
I don't want...
Helen, go on, Audrey.
My son was murdered.
I'm with you.
I've written a book and nobody's interested.
Exactly.
Exactly the same. Nobody wants to know my side.
But that's the free market of ideas, isn't it? That's
But it
just
isn't,
the
because
people.
we're in touch with over 150 families, and many of them are absolutely desperate to get their stories told. They're asked to go on documentaries.
Oh,
They're
hang on,
asked
are you
to
saying,
go.
so if they wrote their stories, it would be all right for Mary Bell to write
No,
their
no, no. They want to tell their side of the story, but no one will listen. No one listens to the victim's side. No one will publish them. There's too much. There's a lot of cases where there's been corruption in the judiciary, and no one will touch those stories with a barge pole. But the criminals are allowed to write their side of the story, and that's taken away free speech.
Can you learn anything from these books?
Yeah, we need to know what makes a murderer tick, so we can do something to help in the future. If we don't write them sensibly and with the proper people doing the ghosting, then we do have a problem.
Margaret?
But it's important we learn what is going on in their mind.
Who can
Not
possibly-
for profit.
Margaret, it's important we learn what's going on in their minds.
No, because how can you believe a word that's coming out of Mary Bell's mouth? Here is a renowned liar. She
Exactly.
murdered 2 children. Excuse me, I'm speaking. How can you be assured that person is telling the truth? Certainly not Mary Bell. Mary Bell is a renowned liar. And how can you believe all that she's saying about her mother? She waited till her mother dies to bring out a book? No, I'm afraid I don't believe a word of it.
That's right. I mean, that's why this particular book is possibly not of a lot of value.
No.
Because, I mean, Gita Serena's just written it for the money.
Yes.
I mean, she's not interested in the truth.
Yeah.
And as far as she's concerned, Mary Bell is very honest and would never lie to her, because she took 6 months to do it. But if we're going to write the books, we've got to write the books using sensible people like Paul, you know, that know what they're talking about, that know what they're doing, so that we can get to the truth and find out what's going on in their
Where
minds.
does the victims come in all this? Surely the victims should be consulted. And
If it's going to be published, yes, we have to be
Yes.
consulted,
They
because
must come
when it's
first and
published and we
foremost,
suddenly
not
find
the
out,
offender.
it's a hell of a shock for us.
Lindsay, we can learn something. It's an important social document.
We hear all this at the bottom line, and that's what we've got to look at. This is about money, and purely money. And what upsets me more than anything, it's not been given any scientific benefit whatsoever. This has been hawked round Fleet Street. Who'll pay the best price? We're talking about an author with £2 million.
That changes it, and we'll come on to that. All right. But leaving that to one side, let's assume there's no money involved, nothing changed hands. Here's a legitimate, honest, academic attempt to get into the mind of a child who is a child killer.
We hear
Is
all
that itself a valuable thing to do?
This book would not have been on the shelves if Mary Bell hadn't been paid money. What we're saying is blood money is acceptable. That's what's been said here, and that isn't acceptable. The public out there will not accept that, and that's what we're talking about. We're talking about blood money, and actually giving money to people who have committed horrendous and hideous crimes to then benefit in the future. There's a clear message here if we're not careful. Commit a crime and get money later, and we're not having that. That's not acceptable. And that's not what people wish to see.
This is all about money.
Absolutely.
Not necessarily money for Mary Bell.
No,
but money
that's
for the
mixing
publishers, money for Gita Serena. And what has happened here
Can't we learn?
We can learn. We can learn from this book. I have
you say
read the book.
You say it's all
And
about
is-
money.
it is-
You've written a lot of similar books, Clive, haven't you?
Yeah, I've written other articles and been involved with a lot of criminals.
So yours was all about money?
All about money. All about money, but it's wrong. I will say now, it is wrong that
You're gonna give the
people
money
in
back then?
crime...
You're gonna give all the money back then?
I didn't...
No,
I
if
didn't
you've
make money
repented,
out of it.
if you've repented
No,
of what you've done,
I
you're
didn't
going to give it all
personally make
back.
money. I was paid money.
You're paid money. Right, well, you were paid. You
I was
made
paid
money.
a salary.
Oh,
Of
you
course I
paid.
did.
You paid.
I was paid a salary.
earned money for writing about people like
I
Mary
agree.
Bell.
I agree.
And you think it's wrong?
I do.
Right, you're going to give all that money back to the charities that are represented here today?
No, it won't happen. It won't happen. No, I
Why
won't.
not? Go on,
No, I will not give it back.
Why not?
After all, we're the victims. Why can't we get what you got?
I was paid to do a job. Okay, and
You just said that job was wrong and the payment was wrong.
No, I did that job at that particular moment in time, and the people I wrote about were not paid. Okay, they were not paid.
But why not?
Why were they not paid? Because it was wrong to pay a criminal. Is it wrong that I earn my living as a writer or as a journalist or anything else? Is that
What about the profits? What about the profits? Somebody's profiting from it.
I agree.
Groups like Dee's and mine, we're desperate for money to help the victims, and
because your girlfriend was murdered.
That's right. Yeah, my girlfriend was murdered, and we're all victims, and we struggle on to help people, help other victims that have come after us to try and survive what's happened to them, and all that's happening is the killers are profiting all the time, and we, the victims, we get nothing and nobody to help us.
In my
and
case,
people sit there piously saying, "Well, I was only doing my job."
Oh, that's
Well,
not
I-
We know other people who said that too, don't we, Clive? I was only doing my job.
By doing
I
your
hope I'm
job,
not-
you're getting some of
Who
the
was there
profits
for
out
me
of
No,
it.
no,
when
I
had
wasn't
to
getting
fetch
profits.
these
I got a
children?
salary.
You got a salary.
Well,
What do you get?
I
A salary
got-
could have
I
been a
got-
huge one.
Of
You're
course,
exploiting people like
of course,
money.
but the argument could be, Robert, you're exploiting Mary Bell and the people today with this programme, and you're getting paid.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's a hypocritical
load of
argument.
rubbish.
The point that you need to get to here is, A, is this book,
thing here,
is this
the thing
book going to help
today-
anybody?
The
thing
thing
today
is
is
to
every-
help the victims, not the publishers.
Right, and everybody here today has come of their own free consent.
Of course.
They're not being talked about or written about without their permission. Should criminals then make profits from their crimes, Tony?
First of all, I want to say this. It's a very emotive subject we're talking about here with children. It's a thing taboo. Do not touch a child. Do not rape a woman. And don't be a grass. That is a criminal code that I live by. Now, number two, I think there is an argument for this book. What worries me about it is the fact that money is being made from child crime.
You made money from crime, Tony.
Yes, I didn't want to do it. I
And for
did not
writing-
want to do it.
and for
No, I
writing
didn't want to
about
do
it.
I refused to do it.
Oh, you're
first.
another one who didn't want to do
No,
it.
I didn't want to do it.
Did you take the money?
130.
Did you take the money, Tony?
Yes, I did. And
Well,
I gave a
why
lot to
did
charity. I gave a lot to charity.
A lot.
Most of it went to charity.
Why?
Yeah.
What?
Not at all, we didn't.
Why didn't
Most
you
of it
give
did.
Why?
Most of it did,
Why
and
not
I can
all?
prove that.
How much did you keep for yourself?
I
Obviously,
covered my expenses.
enough to keep you comfortable.
No, far be the case.
What's
Far
wrong
be
Should
with
he
that
profit
in
then?
case?
Should he-
No, he shouldn't
Hang on,
profit.
please, one at a
No,
time.
he shouldn't profit. I mean, my father-in-law was murdered in 1977. The man that actually wrote the book had stated in the newspapers that he was doing it to be a millionaire. I mean, does he realise the hurt and that he's causing the family? I mean, my husband is totally shattered, to be honest. The families are shattered. Do they realise what they're doing to people for what? For money? I mean,
But then again, people make it out of crime. We're talking about here now, journalists.
Should they? What we're asking is, should they?
I don't know that, but I think...
this is why he's making his money.
On the what the
You made
message
money
was
out of
then.
crime too, didn't you?
I made an awful lot, yeah.
And from writing and selling it about.
I'm right. Yeah, and I'm not
And right-
embarrassed about
and
it.
you-
I'm not saying I'm really sorry for doing it.
You've been
And if
charged with.
anybody
You've been,
would
let me
like
just be clear. You've been charged with murders and
Twice.
Twice
But
with
I was
murders.
found not guilty twice.
Oh yeah, charged. I did say charged, and a lot. You've done a lot of other things too. But you're
Correct.
quite honest and
And I'm
open about it.
embarrassed of
Of
none.
course, you're making money about writing about it
Right,
now.
right.
And should you be able to do that?
I am allowed to do it.
I know, should
and,
you be?
And I think that if there's the little group of people over there that would like to say, don't do it, Dave, because it's morally wrong, and there's 10 million people that are giving me a tenner a book saying, I think it's right, I'm afraid I'm going with the masses, and I'm really sorry.
Hang on, please. I think from this face, I know you are a gangster, or was a gangster. He hasn't...
talking about me.
No, I'm talking about the pair of them. They've gone out, they've done their business. These people advocate that she's got a freedom of speech. They lose that the minute they attack their first child. She shouldn't even be out.
Can I just...
Hang on,
I
Mary.
object most strongly...
We're talking.
This is what I'm saying.
Yes, but we've moved it on from Mary Bell, and we're talking about criminals
Okay, we're talking
profiting
about
from their
these
crime.
two
These
gentlemen
yeah.
profiting from crime. Their crimes, they put their life on the line to do it. They didn't go out attacking...
Oh, so that's all right then, is it?
No, it isn't all right, but you know...
But
where they
you're drawing a line. You're drawing a line. You're saying
drawing a
this is
line,
more
Robert.
acceptable.
I am not drawing a line.
He's-
No more than I draw the line with this gentleman. But he's got the courage to sit there and say, yeah, I've done it for the money.
Yeah.
That mayor who's written a book didn't. She's done it for society. I've never heard so much rubbish in my bloody life.
Hey, you're not supposed to swear here. No, you didn't swear. No, all right. That's not swearing. Okay. Good. As long as everybody else agrees with you. We're talking about criminals profiting from the my friend here charged with 2 murders, which, in his words, I think
and
he
has he
said somebody
actually
got away
wrote
with it,
about
but he wasn't convicted.
Have you actually wrote about the murders? I mean, he's not been charged with, so he's not obviously going to come out and describe the actual murders and whatever else. I mean, the man that murdered my father-in-law actually described how he felt it was uplifting. I mean, he felt really good about it. I mean...
Well, he's a sicko.
Why should he have the right to write books, make a play? I mean, who gives Hugh Collins this right?
But
the
people
law?
do want to know about
want
these
that
things, you know.
changed,
We don't want to know about children. That's the whole point.
No.
I don't want to know about children.
You're
or
making
women
a
being
distinction,
raped.
but it's
Yeah, there is a
okay.
distinction.
It's okay to
There is a
write
distinction.
about. So it's all right for the Mad Axeman to write about killing everybody, is it?
No,
It's all right.
I'm afraid what he's saying is there is a you cannot tar all criminals
No,
with the
that's
same
right.
brush.
Where
I'm
do you
really
draw the
sorry
line
about that. You draw the line at children
All right,
and the things that
so
are
it's all
morally
right to write
wrong.
about a murder.
Well, it depends what type of murder we're talking.
I want somebody else. Come on, hold on, please. I want it to
Everybody is...
And I'm afraid he died first, and I'm not sorry for that.
I've got a daughter who's 28, she's still my child. Do you ever think, when you've written the books and you're making money, what you've done to those victims' families? Even if the guy was another criminal, what about his mum and his brother? They live with this for the rest of their lives, and it's all on the side. You cannot make distinctions. We all have our own opinions.
I would rather be here talking about writing the book than being buried and having him talking about the book he wrote about shooting me.
We all have our own opinions of who should be able to write books, but you can't make distinctions. Crime does pay, and that is the message we're giving to our kids
Well,
now.
every one of us, and I wrote this book, and it was a #1 bestseller, I condemn crime. I can never tell a child or anyone to follow me. Frankie Fraser's done it, Freddie Foreman's done it, Dave Courtney's done it. We have all condemned it. I've had a playwright.
You have to do that.
I
We
cannot
have to be
justify
teaching.
doing that.
You know, they're saying that this book,
I would like to know why
was
you
not
take-
written by a psychiatrist, and they're saying it'll have a positive effect. I actually think it'll have the opposite effect, because there are lonely 10 and 11-year-old children who could think, well, I'll go and kill a child, do a few years, and come out, I can be a millionaire.
No, my cousin Jason Swift got killed, and there is a book out about that. It's called Lambs to the Slaughter by Ted Oliver, and
he was killed by
paedophiles.
yeah.
And really, this book about Mary Bell, it's like a training book for young children, as you're saying. It is a training guide book for them, and I don't think it should be on sale. It brings up old wounds for the lady over there.
This is the tragic side.
Have
we stopped being human beings because we're victims nowadays? Is that what people are saying? We are not human beings. We can, my family can be used. The people in here's family can be used because they are now not human beings.
Clive?
They're victims, and we can do what the hell we like with them.
Clive.
Sorry about that.
The problem...
Answer that.
No, I will. The problem is always victims. There are always victims in any walk of life.
More
and
victims
anything
than
you do.
criminals.
No, there are not. There are far more criminals than there are victims.
There's 30 victims to one Kray.
There are more victims than criminals. It's a matter of fact.
Well,
but let's not argue the facts.
All right.
June's right.
Inevitably, you're
leave that.
But if you look at it, are you going to learn? Is anybody going to learn? Is Mr. Courtney and Mr. Lamborghini here, with their stories, going to be able to send a message to anybody? Are kids going to read those books and say, I'm going to have a glamorous life of crime like these guys? Or am I going to end up spending 2/3 or 3/4 of my life in prison?
I don't call that glamorous.
No, that's what I'm saying.
It's becoming glamorous. One of your colleagues is all on chat shows, Mad Frank.
No,
he's doing
if
advertisements.
Frankie Fraser can get up there, and he's said it many times,
But he's
if anybody
becoming a
wants to follow me
celebrity.
after 40 years of imprisonment, if they want to admire that, then there's something wrong in this world. He said it. He said it.
Helen.
I just want to know how everyone can know about these books before they've been written. I mean, how can you make up your mind whether something's going to be useful before it's even, you've even read it? I want to have the opportunity. And the thing is, coming on to the money thing, I want to make up my own mind. I want to read the book. I want to make up my own mind. I can't say all these people. I bet there's nobody here who's actually read this book because it hasn't even, come out yet. It's only come out yesterday. It's out like a few days ago.
It's published today, but it's been available for quite a number of days.
How can you say this is going to encourage people into crime, or this has got nothing of any benefit to anything? You can't learn anything until you've read it. And the sad fact of life.
If you represent.
Excuse me, are you a mother?
The sad fact of life is that it is.
Why are you asking that? Why are you asking that?
How the hell can she talk about it if she's not a mother and she's not gone through it? How can you decide to read the book and not know anything about it?
We can all decide. I think we can all make up our own
I don't want to. I don't want to because I know what it's about.
I want the choice to be able to make up my own mind.
You want the choice, dear. You want the choice, dear, whether this book should come out. Do you mind if I say something? Because you say a lot, but you mean nothing. At the end of the day, do you want the choice? You see a magazine article come out that just isn't factual to the end of a murder trial that causes another young boy's death?
Well, I do, because I don't think you
think that's all right?
I do. I don't.
You think that's all right that a boy's in his grave?
I don't think you can make up your mind about the worth of an article until you've read it. I
have read it, dear.
Yeah, but
My son died with it in his hands, so don't talk to me about rights and wrongs. And I hope the government's really listening here. I truly do. I would like to speak to you after the programme.
It's very dangerous to try and stop something coming out. The only way to deal with these things is
It's very dangerous when they're lies and it causes a young boy's
It is
death.
lies, but that's what
So
happens.
I'm left with no children, but you'd rather that magazine article come out.
People do write lies, they exaggerate
I'd
things,
rather
they make
speak
things
to
up, they put their side
sensible journalists than speak to these so-called liars.
I think the problem is censorship is not only dangerous, it's very difficult. I wonder how you would frame legislation to prevent somebody profiting from crime. Journalists actually follow a code. Ironically, this story couldn't have come... Yeah, well, you can smirk on it, but it's true. This story could not have come out through investigative journalism if what was required was for Mary Bell to be paid. Journalists, that is now off limits to newspaper journalists. It came out because no such statute or no such regulation, self-imposed or not, covers book publishers. Maybe there should be a book publishers complaints commission as there is for newspapers.
The thing journalists and book publishers don't take into consideration when they're publishing all these things is our feelings. We don't know about it a lot of the time till it's published. Half the time it's not accurate, and the damage it does to us again, because it's suddenly been published out of the blue, 10 years down the line, it does incredible damage to the victims. And the media have no qualms about publishing it. They don't even think to get
But hang on, in this
they have
case,
no sympathy for us.
In this case, it wasn't the media. It wasn't the newspaper media or the broadcast. Yeah,
but it happens all the time.
This is a very important case.
The thing that happened there is disgusting.
So do you have, if the media has become partly on trial over this case, do you have any sympathy, David, and I'm talking about sympathy, for the way in which Mary Bell has been treated by the press? What has happened to her?
I don't think I do, actually. I have sympathy for her daughter. I think that the daughter is unfairly sort of caught, thankfully not identified, but caught in the spotlight. I think that's right. I've heard you say that, the same sort of thing. But exactly, the woman who opened the gate to the publicity was the mother.
Tried to sell a book, a daughter would never have come into it. And if it had been my daughter, rather than accept all that money, I would rather have given it up for the sake of my child. And I've seen my friend whose son was murdered. I've been near her every day for 11 years and seen what it's done to her. So I know what it's done to this lady, because I've seen my friend at the time of his death, every time heartbroken. Christmas time, his present, she bought him something and she gave it to the children's home. Do you know where I think that money ought to go? If she could be a decent and Christian person, give it to those children that's abused like she's been, supposedly. Now, who knew that? We've only got her word for it. Her mother's not here to tell us. Bless her, wherever she is, she's not here to tell us. But we know as mothers what it must feel like to have a child murdered.
June, you know, June, don't you? You don't have to kind of use your imagination. You know. We're talking about the press, and my friend here was saying they don't take account of what it does to the victims. They have. How have you?
There is no one takes account apart from a victim who knows what it feels like. I mean, my daughters were made victims. Now my grandson's been made a victim. I mean, in a different way to a murder, but just as hurtful, just as harmful.
How was I made a victim? Because the way my childhood was very hard and unloving and that. Because
why?
Why? Because my mum couldn't love me after losing her son. You know, she found it very hard.
I was frightened to love her in case I lost her. I was terrified that and I loved her, but I was frightened to show it for the simple reason if someone had took her, I couldn't survive.
That's your. Please, you've been telling us a lot about how mothers were feeling, and a mother is talking, and you're interrupting her.
You know, I mean, I couldn't take that again. I couldn't lose a child again. So what I done was I stood back and I gave them money if they fell down, money if they hurt themselves. I couldn't take them in my arms. Do you know what? My daughter even today finds it very hard to tell me she loves us. I've learned how to tell her, but my two daughters find it very hard to tell me how they love us because of the way I brought them up. They were prisoners until they were old enough to fend for themselves.
Prisoners?
Prisoners. They weren't allowed to play with anybody over the age of 11. They were kept in a garden that was fenced up to the hilt. I used to put a thing on her, a harness on her, and I used to put her at the clothesline, so if I did have to go away from her, she couldn't be touched. I would know she would be in the garden where nobody knows what the victims...
You became overprotective. You just sound
I did.
like the mothers who have their children taken away from them, lose them, even for days. They feel that same kind... But you also said you actually stopped loving them because you were afraid of losing them.
I never stopped loving
them.
I stopped showing them love.
Because you were afraid of being hurt.
I was terribly afraid. Apart from that, I was on Mandrex, which is a very hard sedative, and then after that, they tried to wean us off the Mandrex, so then I went on to drink, and then Sheena fetched her first book out, and I tried to commit suicide, so I went back on to...
Your marriage broke up too, didn't it?
The marriage broke up. I mean, my ex-husband didn't only lose one child, he lost 3. Because he also lost these 2 as well.
How did he lose these 2?
Because we're separated and I took these with me.
Right, okay. And you were then talking about the effects upon you and your family of losing your son.
Yeah.
Of him being murdered by...
horrific.
By Mary, being killed by Mary Bell. What I was asking was, how is the effect, because that's where we were talking about now, the press being upon you. You said it's ruined your life, Linda, the press.
Yes.
In what way?
Well, I've got 4 children, and my children didn't know nothing about this, and now they know.
They didn't know anything.
They didn't even know they had an uncle.
How did they find out?
In the street. In the street.
How in the street?
Kids. Some parents must have read the paper and told their kids who I was, and
they were shouting Mary Bell over the fence.
And what did you do?
I had to sit down.
Brought the kids in.
And what's the effect on them?
Well, my son asked us if Mary Bell was going to come and get him. And my daughter, all she wrote, she got one of them little pink secret diaries, what you print in, she just wrote Mary is a killer.
And she
don't eat.
And this is because you learnt the way you did, but you never had time to tell them.
No, well, I didn't.
What about your child?
I didn't want to tell them. I wanted to live a new life.
We've never talked about this for years, and then all of a sudden we're having to talk about it because everybody else is.
What about the way you were treated by the press as you were growing up?
I don't know, my mum used to shield her, she used to hide her.
I protected them for 30 years from the press, and I never spoke out at anything Mary Bell had done through her life, even though we're having a child, because I thought that child's life was precious, and I know how precious a child's life is.
Do you feel any sympathy for the way she's been treated? Do you feel any sympathy at all for the way she's been treated?
She's brought it on herself, she's not a child now.
But the child hasn't, though, has it?
No. No, that is a different matter totally. That child, that is disgusting. She has now made that child a victim, which is terrible. These kids have had to run away from the press all their lives.
Isn't the point here that this has been badly handled by the publishers, by Gita Serini? You should have been informed that this book was coming out. You should have been told well in advance that it was being written. You should have been prepared. I don't think the publishers or Gita Serini had any idea what effect it would have on Mary Bell and her family.
They thought I would just lie down the same way as I did for her first,
possibly,
because I was ill then, but I'm not ill now, and I'll fight it all the way along the line.
Fleet Street has been looking for a way of outing Mary Bell for 30 years. They have been restrained from doing that, as David said, by injunctions. What has happened now is this book has been written and they found a way of getting to her. The horror is that you weren't told and her own daughter didn't know.
Which also is part of this learning from this book, is we're learning about, we suppose, Mary Bell's childhood and the influence on her parents. Are we saying, are we accepting part of the argument here that the parents, her parents, are responsible, at least to some extent, for what she did?
Well, I think that, first of all, no one should have to lose a child. I think it must be this terrible thing that should happen to anyone. But the second thing, I think, is there's another victim here, and that is Mary Bell herself. Because Mary Bell at 11 is not Mary Bell at 41. They are 2 completely different people. And I don't think any of us can be held responsible at 30, 40 or 50 for what we did when we were 11. However awful it might...
No. Of course she can. She made her choice at 11. My 4-year-old son knows what's right and wrong. Exactly. Mary Bell at 11 knew what was right and wrong. She knew that it was bad. If a 4-year-old knows it's bad to hit his brother, then surely an 11-year-old knows it's bad.
Of course they may know it, but sometimes other things take over and they do things. I'm not going to try and psychoanalyse why she did it. God knows why she did it. I don't suppose she knows why she did it. But I'm sure of one thing, and that is that she's regretted it every day of her life since then.
Sure
and
How do you know that?
How do you know that? You can't go on and on and on blaming someone for something they did when they were a small child.
She's still the same person. I still feel the same person as I do from the age of 11, I just feel a bit wiser.
Well, I'm sorry, I don't.
I do. I'm exactly the same person.
Well, then you ought to
I've
grow
got the
up.
same
Listen to
morals.
her.
I'm perfectly grown up, thank you. I'm a mother of 2 children who are perfectly well adjusted, very well brought up children, and they know the difference
you were
between right
abused.
and wrong. I was abused. I was physically, mentally, sexually abused by my stepfather. My mother abandoned me for my stepfather when he was sentenced to 10 years in prison. And look at me.
And you
I
didn't
live a-
commit murders?
Of course not. I've not discussed that.
You haven't an ounce of compassion in your body, have you?
No.
Well, you should have, because
Why
if you
should
have
I?
children, you should be compassionate.
Of course, I'm compassionate for my children.
But
It's
one
not until I
day-
gave birth to my
one
first son that
day-
I know what pure love is, and I've got that for my children. But I don't feel compassion
One
for other
day,
people.
if Mary Bell apparently never had any love. Nobody ever felt.
I was never loved. I grew up till I was 13 in a militia-style household.
She's finished.
And then at 13, when we finally had the courage to tell the police, my mother abandoned me. She didn't love me. She abandoned me for my stepfather, who got 10 years for raping me and my sister. And then I went and lived with my father, who had been divorced from my mother since I was 18 months old, and God bless him, he just didn't know what to do. He didn't know what to do.
Perhaps you were
He didn't know how to show me love. I wasn't shown love until I met my husband.
You're a very strong person,
No,
and you
I'm
couldn't
not. I'm
cope.
the weakest person I know, and I cope very badly with situations.
Everybody makes choices. Both my brother and I were both sexually abused. My brother then went on to abuse me. He made a choice. He turned to a life of crime, not only abuse but other things as well. I didn't. I made the choice not to.
Paul?
When we're working with young offenders, we have to do 2 things. We have to understand what led to the disturbance which caused them to commit offences, and if you look at children who kill, they do typically have a history of abuse, emotional neglect and trauma in their own childhood. But at the same time, we have to bring them to an appropriate sense of guilt for what they've done. Both those things are a very important part of their rehabilitation, and we do need to learn why it is that some children with those experiences commit serious offences and others don't.
Can I just say, after I disclosed about my abuse, I had excellent counselling, which I think, was a big part of why
But Paul
I
is saying
turned
we
out
need
the way
to
I
know why
was.
you didn't commit offences, given your background, but your brother did.
I think there's a lot of factors involved. I don't think you can pick out one particular thing. I think maybe in general I am a stronger person than my brother, but I also think that
I'm naturally a weak-willed person. Anybody that knows me would tell you that. But when you know that someone else is doing to you, like the sexual abuse, like the beatings, like the not being told by your mother that you're loved, when that happens, you know it doesn't feel right, and so you adjust
absolutely.
yourself.
Oh, absolutely.
So I tell my children I love them 50 times a day. I don't think you can tell them enough how much
So
you
hang
love
on, you knew the
them.
difference
And I
between
do that.
right and wrong?
Oh, yes.
You knew the difference between
Of
right
course
and
I
wrong?
did, of
Mary
course I
Bell
did.
knew the difference between right and wrong,
Of course
Paul,
she did.
at 11.
It's clear from her upbringing and her disturbance that her responsibility was reduced as compared with an adult doing the same thing who hadn't had that background, or any people simply to abandon all responsibility for their actions. We have to bring them to a sense of guilt for what they've done in order that they can then restrain those impulses in the future and become rehabilitated. One of the tragedies of this whole event is that somebody who for 18 years had been a seriously disturbed child who had been successfully rehabilitated is now in a position where, as a result of this tragic chain of events, that rehabilitation, at least for the moment, has been wrecked with
Why
real
are you
impact on
puffing,
her-
Margaret? Why are you puffing and blood? Why?
Who says she's been rehabilitated? What do we know what crime she's committed since the 18 years? And she's certainly committed a very serious crime again. She's robbed the innocent
She hasn't committed
graves
any
of these children.
but
So she's a
that-
very
she
evil
hasn't-
woman. She was diagnosed as a psychopath, wasn't she?
Yes, she was.
Well,
That's
you
right.
can't lose that. That's with you the rest of your life. You have no compassion when you're a psychopath. I don't know why she was allowed to have a child.
We're
let
talking
alone worry
about
her.
part of the explanation, part of the rationale, justification, excuse, call it what you will, for the book is to get into her mind, to understand why she did what she did, and part of the explanation is, well, you have to look at her background. And she had this terrible background with a mother, a prostitute, exploiting her, abusing her, that she didn't know the difference between right and wrong.
I think every child knows the difference between right and wrong. I was abused physically as a child, and I was sexually abused from the age of 14. I don't go out and murder children. I don't go out and I think about killing somebody else.
But do you not feel...
I know the difference between right and wrong. And any child knows the difference between right and wrong, just as any adult knows the difference between right and wrong.
But do you not feel... this is what I find hard to believe, is that people who have been victims of abuse find it so hard to find any sympathy for Mary Bell, who, despite her crimes, was also, it appears, a victim of abuse first. That's what I don't understand.
We don't understand that because she knew exactly what she was doing. She knew what she was doing was wrong. She knew when she did it that it was wrong. If my 4-year-old son knows that to harm somebody else in a physical way or mental way is wrong, any living thing, to harm any living thing is wrong. My 4-year-old son knows that, and I've taught him that.
I think that Mary Bell knows that now, doesn't she?
Does she know at 11? You're saying you don't understand?
If Mary Bell did know at 11, okay, she has committed a crime, and a terrible crime, and nobody is trying to in any way belittle the crime, but just because one feels sympathy for the victim of the crime doesn't mean one is automatically banned from feeling sympathy for the offender as well.
Excuse me, I have an 11-year-old also. I was sexually, mentally, physically abused like yourselves, ladies, and I feel it for the victims' families here that here nobody gives a damn about them.
That's not true.
Yes, it is. Excuse
Mary
me.
Bell doesn't mean you don't care
like
for the victims.
Cavadino just said there. What you're saying here is that child sex abuse isn't an excuse. Child sex abuse is no excuse. I had a choice in my life, like the others here, like most of them here. Hence, I opened a charity because there was nobody to help these victims. Nobody, like Margaret said in the front there, it's right. She is the psychopath like half of my family. And all these victims here, I'm just fed up. Everybody wants the perpetrators. You all feel sorry for the perpetrators.
But he's saying that because you've been there, is there any element where you feel that you could see why she did?
No, I do not. No, Robert, because when I was 3 when I was first abused. Now, at 11-year-old, my daughter is 11, and she knows exactly what's right from wrong. Now, what the ladies said was, you make a choice in your life. I made a choice to take the good path. Now, they choose to do that. And I'm sick of hearing about paedophiles and child killers and that get all the sympathy.
But June, we're talking about you all the way through. We're talking about you and your son and your family. Is it possible? Can you forgive?
Do you know, 3 weeks ago I had learned how to stop hating this girl. I'd never forgive her for the life I've had to live. But 3 weeks ago, before this come, I had actually stopped hating her. I mean, I thought she was a child murderer, and that is why. She's 41 now, and she's started to crucify us again. She is responsible for her actions now, and there's no way I would destroy my child's life like she has for any money in the world. These are my children, they're worth more than any money.
You're a different person now. You're a stronger person.
I'm strong, and she's making me strong because of what she's done to us.
But do you think she'll take care of yourselves? See you in the morning.
The NSPCC are extending their helpline to women who've been on the receiving end of domestic violence. Find out why on today's really useful show at 10:55.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please join our Facebook group. It's called Krays Crime Lords of London. We're a friendly moderated group with over 1,000 Kray and other celebrated gangster videos available for view. There's also thousands of images in the photos sections. The link for the group is in the YouTube description section. I hope we see you there soon.